rights are rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, cannot be voted away.
They really are watching us that hard. Because we always talk about like surveillance government. That's
yes,
really
of voting 100% in line with the Constitution, which should be
that's an accolade. That's like the bare minimum, right? Like,
government has gone far beyond the bounds that the founding fathers wanted us to live under. In fact, they would be really ashamed of what we're putting up from government.
it's time for
today.
a tea party, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Delegate Anders.
Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, I work for the people, so everybody calls you delegate and tries to treat you like somebody special. I remember I got my first piece of mail when I got elected, and it said, "To the Honorable Chris Anders," and I giggled like a 12-year-old girl for a good 5 minutes. So,
Gosh, that was what, 18 years ago, huh?
no,
First piece of mail 18 years ago?
that was the first time elected. I'm a freshman, so it's the first time I've actually been elected.
Oh, wait.
I worked in politics. I worked on campaigns.
That's
I
right.
worked on nonprofit groups.
There we go.
But it was first time elected. So when the letter showed up at the House, I was like, wow, okay.
Wait. So when were you? Oh, I guess first of all,
I was elected in
Delegate Chris
24.
Anders, everybody. We're just gonna roll through. So
Okay.
you first time elected. So when did you become a delegate for West Virginia?
In 2024.
So you've worked in politics and campaigns since.
Right. I've worked in politics and campaigns for well over 18 years, probably 19, so I'm starting to age myself. But no, I've worked on different presidential campaigns. I've worked on U.S. Senate, U.S. House campaigns, and about 30 or 40 state-level campaigns. So I've also worked for a lot of nonprofit groups, and suddenly my district came open, and my wife convinced me to toss my hat in the ring, so I did.
So what was that like? And so you went from. Well, let me ask you this first. So what made you transfers over to just working for like campaigns to actually be tossing your hat in the ring, essentially?
Well, because I looked at West Virginia and I took a good solid look at, the people of West Virginia and what they want. And then, because I always watch what happens in Charleston. And I realized what was happening in Charleston is not what the people want. The people want a smaller government. They want a true conservative, like constitutional style government. But what happens in Charleston's most of the time the exact opposite.
Well, it's the framework we're expected to, abide by, yet not everybody does. The Constitution, imagine that. Yep.
Right. So, and looking at that, and with the seat being open, my wife said, "Hey, you've ran so many campaigns, you've worked on so many issues across the country. Why don't you just toss your hat in the ring and you give it a whirl?" So I did, and we didn't quite know what we were getting into because when my wife and I had only spent one night apart since we were married, and suddenly I'm gone for 60 days down in Charleston, and that was a total change for us. And she's been quite the trooper. She supports me 100%, but it's a little bit different because we're 5 hours from the state capitol by the time you stop to get gas on the way down. So it's like living in a different world. So to be honest, I'm glad to be back home now that the session's over.
All the way up here in the Eastern Panhandle is a totally different world than down there. I think I've been as far as like Wheeling, but never down that far. It's very. Charleston's a big city, but it's not like super like.
It's actually not a big city. It appears to be, but it really isn't. I've been to a lot of state capitals. It's probably one of the smaller state capitals in the nation. And it is way down there. I will say that West Virginia is a very diverse state. You have people from the Eastern Panhandle, people from the Northern Panhandle, people from Morgantown and WVU, and then you have the Southern Coalfields. So a lot of it has been learning about what life is like, let's say in Boone County or Mingo County, and talking with
some crazy county names.
Yeah, it is. Well, there's 55 of them, so they had to get inventive, I guess. But it's like when I got elected, then we started the Freedom Caucus, and I was elected chair of the Freedom Caucus, and we have members from the Southern Coalfields. So I spent a lot of time this past session just learning what life is like, just listening to them and understanding that the world we live in here in the Eastern Panhandle is radically different from what the Southern Coalfield life is like.
Really? So, I mean, I guess I can imagine that, but like, what do you mean by radically different? So I know down there, so it's a much more rural area, essentially?
Much more rural area. There's very few opportunities for employment. There's rampant poverty. People are doing what they can to get by. Up here, we're really close to Washington, D.C. A lot of people commute into Northern Virginia to work, and you don't have that opportunity down there. When they close down a lot of the coal fields through some of the actions of the past presidential administrations, you end up with, there's no jobs. And that's what powered West Virginia for a very, very long time. So it's been a huge swing over the past 20 plus years to go from, a coal-powered state, which was powered by the southern coal fields, to now it's almost like the Eastern Panhandle is now driving the state in a lot of cases.
I'm trying to remember the history regarding coal down there. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that it was a pretty abrupt kind of transition, because I feel like there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it where you kind of like cycle out of something, that's older, and then you can move into a new modern form of energy. But I'm pretty sure it was very abrupt, so there wasn't a way to like really transition.
It was, and what happened was, in violation of the Constitution, obviously, the president, who was Obama at one point, and then of course Biden, moved against coal. If you remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president, she was like, "I'm going to shut down all coal fields."
That's never a good thing to just abruptly stop something. They do things so abruptly that I feel like there's not enough time to catch up, and then all these people are displaced because of it.
Well, I think, first of all, the government controlling the market is wrong. It should be a free market. In other words, whichever method of power is the most efficient, whatever is the cheapest for the people, let the free market decide. But government's got very involved with picking winners and losers, which we did a lot this past session, why I voted no constantly, because it was all about government picking winners and losers, using your tax dollars to enrich some companies and overly burden others. And that's not how a republic and a free society is supposed to work. It should be equal across the board. I don't care if it's coal, natural gas, solar, wind, nuclear, whatever. It should be whatever works best and delivers the best product. And we saw a lot of taxpayer subsidies going to things like solar panels and windmills, which have been proven they're not really that effective right now.
Rocket companies for billionaires.
So, yep, and they all, just like when Bill Gates showed up in Charleston, Epstein's pen pal, Bill Gates, showed up in Charleston.
There's a couple of those pen pals.
Yeah, he has a couple of those. But Bill Gates shows up in Charleston, and he shows up down there with Shelley Moore Capito, and of course Governor Justice, and so many others, and convinces the legislature, this was right before I was elected, to give $300 million of taxpayer money to bring in foreign energy.
Doesn't he have like a couple billion?
Yeah, he doesn't need that money. I think the taxpayers need that money more. And it shouldn't, and again, I keep going back to this. Government is supposed to leave you alone, right? I believe in liberty, which includes personal liberty and economic liberty. Mm-hmm. The government should not be interfering in the market. They should just let the free market work.
So what do you think that the government's role should be like in a perfect world for you?
In a perfect world?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, government, there was a very good book written by Frederick Bastiat in the 1840s called The Law. And he talked about, this form of government or that form of government. Really, in the end, government should just be making sure nobody violates anybody else, whether that's through, court cases or, have acts of aggression on other people. They're not supposed to get in there and control every aspect of your life. I don't know if you know this or not, but West Virginians live under about 125,000 regulations. So
just to kind of put it into so I can understand the scale, what does a regular or another state have? Is that a lot for us?
They're about the same. But when you have a point when the government's telling you what light bulb you can have in your house and what commode you can have in your house, and then you look at the Constitution and go, I don't see that there. They've assumed all these powers because the more power they have, the more money they have. Mm-hmm. And of course, everybody loves cronyism. Well, not me, but everybody loves to fight over, all the largesse from the taxpayers' table. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. For example, we passed the budget this past year. I voted against it. Let me start off. I voted against the budget because it was $5.4 billion, which was...
For West Virginia?
For West Virginia.
That seems like so much money for West Virginia.
It's a ton of money, but not only that, but it actually increased beyond the rate of inflation. Now, we can talk about the inflation and the inflation tax later if you want, but it actually grew the size and scope and spending of government. And this is supposed to be a Republican supermajority is increasing the size, scope, and spending of government. So they pass that budget, and then what they do is after they pass that budget, then suddenly it's like they've rooted around the taxpayer couches and they find all this other money and they start to do supplemental funding. Like I know I voted against $370 million in supplemental funding. And all of those went through. There were a handful of us in the Freedom Caucus saying no, no, because we did some math. And if instead of spending all that money, if they just sent that money back to the taxpayers in this economy, for those that actually pay taxes, would have been somewhere around $500 a person they'd have gotten back. And when we have utility rates going through the roof, when we have, grocery prices, I mean, every time I go to the grocery store, I'm just absolutely stunned how much I've spent. And that's because of the inflation that's caused by government spending. See, government spending is directly tied to the inflation rate because government can only get money three different ways. They can either tax it, they can borrow it, or they can print it. And most of the money that they have now has been printed over the past couple years. So that's why, everybody wants to blame China, they want to blame Taiwan or Iran or anything else about the increase in prices of everything. It's actually the government doing it because it's printing more money. The more you print, the less it's worth. And so people on fixed incomes and the lower middle classes are suffering horribly. So if we could have instead of...
What's a deficit? You know what that is.
Well, what, $39 trillion in debt? I think they said if you stacked $100 bills, you could reach the moon now with our debt.
Yeah, but
It's that crazy. And people's like, and it's just like I see people always talking about, well, we need to increase minimum wage. Well, what does it matter if they just print more money, right? In the end, we've got to get control over our money.
One of my things that I wanted to do in my downtime
was dig into why this area has so many empty warehouses. Keep building more warehouses. And I'm sure that kind of ties into the data center. I don't know, but that's
They did the same thing, by the way, with power generation. Because if you have a coal mine that's paid off, right? Mm-hmm. You can't charge the same rate to the customers. This is government again. You can't charge the same rate as if you build a new power plant.
Okay. Wait, hang on. Say that one more time. Wait. All right, what'd you say?
Okay, if you have an existing coal-fired power plant, right, and it's paid off, the government keeps you from charging the same rate that you could if you built something new, because they want to see you keep building something new.
What do you mean the government keeps you from charging?
Because all the rates are controlled through the Public Service Commission.
Okay, this is a whole new world to me. So, okay.
Yeah, it's a train wreck, and that's why our energy prices, beyond the inflation, it's the policies and the way they regulate. In other words, most coal-fired plants in West Virginia are only operating around 38% of what they could. Because they're prohibited by the government from charging a profitable rate like they can as if they build a
when they sell the coal? Or what do you mean charging?
Charging for the rates, for the electricity.
Okay. I'm trying to
So
figure out what you're talking.
they make them build something new, go farther into debt, and then they can charge a higher rate. It's
and take up
ridiculous.
space, and then it's just, but there's so many empty buildings here and warehouses.
Right.
Like Spring Mills, that huge warehouse up there. What is the deal with that? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that one, and I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's where they're thinking about putting the data centers right over there in Beddington, which is.
Well, yeah, they're putting it half in my district.
Should we move into data centers?
Let's move into data centers.
I'm just going to start this off by saying data centers. A lot of you guys have asked me to participate in the data center movement happening right now. And I honestly, there's been so much going on. Let me get through the next couple of weeks, but we actually probably don't have really a couple of weeks. I don't know how fast that they're doing it, but I don't know much about it. So I'm going to let you educate me on the data center thing. Give me the rundown. Give me the summary. Okay. And what should I know about how it's going to affect everyone here? Because everyone seems pretty mad about it.
Everybody's angry. I was just in a meeting on Friday.
There was
hundreds.
Propped this up, right? Morrissey?
Well, it was the governor's bill. Let me go back and kind of build the way this went through the process. Okay, in 2025, they introduced House Bill 2014, and this was the microgrid and data center bill. And what that bill did is it enabled data centers and microgrids here in West Virginia.
What's a microgrid?
It is a small energy power plant, because what they wanted to do was co-locate these data centers because they use a lot of electricity. So they want to use the power plant right beside of it. right? That way they're not taking power off the grid, because if you take power off the grid like they do in Virginia and other places, you end up with spiking electrical rates. So they came out and they passed this bill. Now, when the bill came to the House initially, it was one of the first bills I ever voted on, and I looked at it, and it was all the regulations for having data centers. And there were things I was looking for. They didn't have protections for the aquifer, for private property rights. It didn't protect local control.
This may be silly, but the aquifer, is it because of the fact that they're utilizing water from the water table, or the heaviness of the building?
The water to cool the data centers.
And are these data centers to run what, like AI? Like, what are they for?
They run AI, they run the web, they run just about everything.
Oh, so it's like a hub for various
It's
things?
basically the cloud.
Okay.
So I looked at the bill, it didn't have that. I had some conversations with the state senate, and they said, listen, we're going to put protections in the bill, just get it over to us. So initially I voted for the bill in good faith, saying, okay, they'll put protections in it. It went to the Senate. When it came back, they didn't have any of these protections for the people in there. Now, keep in mind, I'm not against data centers as data centers. I just don't want to see them run roughshod over the people of West Virginia. So when the bill came back, it didn't have protections for water usage. I wanted to see it use what's called a closed loop system. In other words, they use water and they just constantly move it through the factory. It isn't sucked up to the data center and then used up. Is basically they just use water.
Like a lot of computer, like home gaming computers and stuff. I've seen it before. Where it's the same concept.
Same concept on a much bigger scale. So either that or non-liquid water, and they had no protections for private property.
Non-liquid water. What did you say?
Non-liquid water. There's ways to use antifreeze essentially to cool them, like in your car.
It's a very fancy way of saying antifreeze.
Yeah, but the industry term is non-liquid water.
I
so
love
that's
that.
what I went with. And they said, that most data centers now do it that way. But when I'm looking at the rules and the bill in front of me, it didn't specify that. So they use millions of gallons of water if they don't have a closed loop system. So there was a lot of pressure from the caucus to vote. Just vote for it. We'll straighten it out next year.
What
right?
is pressure? What is pressure like from the caucus?
You have a Republican caucus, you have a Democratic caucus, and of course recently we started the Freedom Caucus, which didn't exist last year. But the Republican caucus was all about let's get this across the finish line, because the amount of tax revenue we will bring into West Virginia, they're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in tax revenue. That's the attraction with data centers, because then we can get rid of the personal income tax, we can get rid of probably most personal property tax, your real estate and your cars. But the bill came back, it didn't have those protections. The caucus, through the whips, which are people that go around whip votes, we really need your vote on this. I'm like, no, because it doesn't have the protection for the people. So I voted no on the bill.
And they weren't open to amending it?
No, they weren't open to amending it then. So then fast forward to this year. Now that we have the microgrid bill and they're starting to move forward with these data centers, said, well, we'll put together the rules package. These are the rules that data centers have to live under. And so they had told us, hey, put some amendments in, how you want to protect, people. Because again, the revenue could be good, but you have to protect the residents of West Virginia. You have to protect, like I said, water usage, private property rights, local control, electric rates. So when the rules package came out, a couple of us got together, the Freedom Caucus got together and said, okay, we're going to put an amendment into the rules. The amendment's going to be very simple. You can't use anything but the antifreeze version of cooling or closed loop cooling. That way you're not draining all the water, right? Drying up people's private wells. You have to be 500 feet away from a residence or a church or a school. You can't just plant them beside someone's house.
They're not very attractive, are they?
No, they're not very attractive. And if, houses in your home is the largest investment most West Virginians will make in their life. And if they just plop a data center right next door, your property value is going to drop. And so we didn't want to see that happen to the people. So we put that in. We also put in that there would be local control. And the type of local control is that the community could come together, they could decide and actually put on a ballot whether or not they wanted these data centers, in their community, because we have the right of self-determination, like they stated in the Declaration of Independence. We also put in, you can't pass any of the, increased electrical cost on to the people. And you also, because I'm a big supporter of the Fourth Amendment, anybody who uses these data centers cannot spy on West Virginians unconstitutionally without a warrant, because the NSA is essentially looking at everything we do on our phones and everything we do on our computers.
Is that a big concern with you? So I understand that concern in itself, but
Right.
like in connected to our local potentially upcoming data center, that's a concern connected to that?
Yeah, because most of these data centers are used by government, like the NSA, right?
Why do they want to come here?
Well, there are, because what has happened, and first of all, when we put our amendment in, we in good faith put the amendment in to protect West Virginians, not only their constitutional rights, but their property rights and local communities. When we debated on the floor, out of around 94, 95 delegates that were on the floor, we got 6 votes. 6 votes in total, because people were arguing on the floor, if we pass these amendments and make people abide by these guidelines, data centers won't come here. My question is, well, what, data centers want to come here if they can drain people's wells, if they can ruin your property value, if they can override, local concerns?
Yeah, they just came and did it respectfully, like,
Right,
that's
be a good neighbor, right? Just be a good neighbor. So our amendment failed. The Democrats put up an amendment that would ask the data center itself, which I consider kind of milquetoast, to ask the data center to watch its own water usage. I mean, come on. That's like the fox in charge of the hen house. I voted for that anyhow, and that still failed. And so in the rules package in the end, when it came up for a final vote, I voted against that. So
you voted against. Wait. Tell me about
the
what you
rules
voted.
package in total, because the rules did not protect.
Still at that point.
Right.
And so, how are the community members feeling about that? I already know that they're not happy about it, but if those protections were put into place, would they be more supportive of it, do you think?
I would think so, because I went to the town hall in Spring Mills last Friday night, and there were hundreds of very angry voters there.
I saw all the posts about it.
Yeah, if you've been to a high school auditorium, there was standing room only, and there was about 100 people standing. It was, these were fired up, and these were my voters, because it's my district. And what they complained about was everything we tried to fix, right?
You're very attuned with your district.
Yeah, but I mean, and it's odd, because for somebody who voted against data centers, right, which I did, they're dropping 2 in my district, one in Carneysville and one in Bennington.
Wait, there's multiple?
Yes.
I'm so behind on this
It's like
topic.
they're picking on me or something. But anyhow, but the people were incensed about this. They mostly about local control. Why can't we control what goes into our communities? And I get that, right? But that was taken away, because they wanted, the administration said that what they wanted to do was have an equal playing field, right? It doesn't matter whether they go in Marion County or Barber County or Berkeley County, all the rules are the same. But you're dealing, like we talked about very early, with radically different communities in West Virginia. Your southern coal fields.
Different needs in each one.
Right. So you should let the local people decide. They don't even make sense. So
That makes too much sense.
But
Wait, what property were they going to be putting it on? Is it government property? Is it?
No, but it's a private contractor, and they've bought several pieces of property. About 558 acres, I think, in Bennington, of which about 200 and
How big is
some
the
are in my
data center
district.
going to be?
It's going to be huge.
One of the things I knew this became serious because I happened to see a message in my inbox. This was maybe like 5 weeks ago, and it was someone who has a farm out there that is a family farm that they've been living in, I don't know, for a very long time. And they reached out to me and they asked me, if I knew anything about it. And they were considering selling their family farm that's been passed down through lineage because of it. And I didn't have enough information, to give them regarding that. But I knew it was serious when somebody was literally going to sell their family farm that's been passed down from I don't know how many generations.
Right. And the thing is, data centers will generate a lot of tax revenue, but we have to be careful of that. And what I mean, we have to be careful. When data centers first went into Loudoun County, they told the residents, because of the amount of revenue we're going to get from the data centers, we'll get rid of your property taxes.
Okay.
And guess what? It never happened. They pulled a bait and switch, so they have really high property taxes, and they have all the taxes. So government just grew and became bigger and interferes in every aspect of Loudoun County residents' life.
That doesn't, because when someone says, oh, we're going to all this tax revenue, that really does nothing for us on this side. We hear that, we're like, so what? Okay, like that, because so a little, I can say, because it doesn't seem like that we really benefit that much from this revenue. It sounds great, but what are we really getting out of it? Will we ever see that? Will it ever go into our community?
That's the important part, and that's what I've suggested to the Berkeley County Commission and Jefferson County Commission, which is my district. I said, if you guys have to make a promise to the public, you have to tell them, for every dollar in revenue we get from data centers, we'll take $1 out of your property taxes.
And we want the receipts. We want to see it.
Yeah, we want to. Well, that will be public knowledge. Unfortunately, they've hid a lot of the information in non-disclosure agreements with the data centers, and of course, I won't sign one, so we don't really know what's going on. But in the end, let's say Berkeley
Why
County
do you
gets.
need an NDA for that?
They have a big privacy clause in House Bill 2014 too, where nobody's going to know what's happening till it happens, and that's really, to me. I mean, that's frustrating to me. It's happening in my community about 10 minutes from my house. And what I'm saying is, let's say Berkeley County, who gets $30 million from revenue from this data center, they should immediately reduce property taxes by $30 million. Because what we have, a lot of people are moving here to the Eastern Panhandle.
Right.
And by moving here, the value of houses are going up. And we have a lot of people who've lived in their homes 50, 60 years, a lot of first-time home buyers, and they can't afford the property taxes, which is essentially, in the end, rent to government. Let's face it.
What'd you say?
Property taxes is just paying rent to government, because
How do you feel about property taxes?
I oppose property taxes. Okay, because you've already been taxed on that money. You were taxed with the income tax, and we can talk about the income tax and why the founding fathers opposed that, and I oppose the income tax as well. But you're taxed on that, then you buy and you have to pay all these taxes when you close on a property. And then every year, if you don't pay your property taxes, the government comes and takes your property from you. And I think it's highly immoral that
it's like a lien almost.
It is. And that it's immoral that these families have lived in these homes for 40, 50, 60 plus years. And now, because the Eastern Panhandle is starting to grow, and their house value goes up, they can't afford on a fixed income to pay their property taxes. That's absolutely immoral. The government has gone far beyond the bounds that the founding fathers wanted us to live under. In fact, they would be really ashamed at what we're putting up from government
It's time for
today.
a Tea Party, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of the first members of the original Tea Party. The founding of the Tea Party, when Ron Paul gave this great speech, I was about 20 foot from Dr. Paul when the first Tea Party rally in D.C., right? Because we're not taxed enough, or we're taxed too much already. The founding fathers rebelled over a 3% tax on a breakfast beverage that was not coffee, but now most West Virginians spend 20 to 30% of their gross income on government.
What happened to us as a people? Listen.
Yeah, a friend of mine often says the taxes are the price we pay for not being the people that our founding fathers were. We actually, and what's really funny when you look back, we paid less taxes, we had less gun regulations, we had more freedom under King George III than we do under our current government today, and we need to change that.
I'm just going to interject, because when we first started talking about doing this, we both cover very different sides of issues, but I said, we're going to have a lot more in common than we think, and we really do, honestly. So
Okay.
You might be.
I might be okay, right? I might be okay. Because the thing is, we did have a lot more freedom. And it's just like what's happening over here in Carneysville. And I've been, the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they are required to hold the paper copies of all firearms purchases in the United States, right? But what they're doing, I found out through some whistleblowers last year, is they're digitalizing everything. So they're creating a de facto gun registration list, which turns into a gun confiscation list. And So I put in legislation to stop that, and everybody at the State House was like, what, you're going to go after the feds? I'm like, yes, that's my duty. As a state
Right.
delegate, it's your duty to stand between the people and federal tyranny, and this is federal tyranny. So there's so much going on. If people really understood, a lot of people, I get it, that they'd rather just go to soccer games and watch TV. But you have to take an interest in politics because, trust me, politics takes a big interest in you.
I see the trajectory of my career now because that's what I'm doing on this level. So
Right. There's so much going on that our founding fathers would be very upset. I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution. I had 11 ancestors that fought in the American Revolution, and I think every day about what they sacrificed. They sacrificed everything they had, and in some cases, everything they ever would have, to provide us with liberty. And what we've done instead is government keeps growing, it keeps getting bigger, it takes more of our money, it takes more, you have economic liberty and personal liberty, it takes more of that away all the time. Most Americans, if you talk to them, and most West Virginians, they just want to be left alone to live their life. But that's not what's happening.
let me ask you this. So do you think that, even if all of the voters go out and vote to support that, do you think that there really ever is a way to kind of pull back the
Oh, absolutely. Anything passed into law can be changed and adapted, right? It can be amended, just like I'm going to continue to do with the data centers. I'm going to continue to go after the ATF. I'm going to continue to, I put in multiple pieces of legislation to get rid of the personal income tax, to get rid of, the property tax, to at least get rid of property taxes for 65 and up so they're not priced out of their homes. Get rid of property taxes on, the first 100 acres of a family farm. That makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we ought to get rid of it altogether. But everything can be changed through the political process. It just takes people to be engaged and realize that so much of your freedom is gone.
Can you tell me a little bit about what a delegate is? What do you do? And how life has been for you as a delegate?
Okay, state delegates are essentially your state level version of Congress. Now, thankfully, we're only in session 60 days out of the year because Mark Twain said whenever your life, liberty, and property is always at risk whenever the legislature is in session. So we're only, unlike Congress, we're not year round. We're only 60 days out of the year. And of course, being elected, I have to go down to the state capitol. There's 100 state delegates and there's 34 state senators. And they make the laws that West Virginians, I'm part of that process, make the laws that West Virginians, live under, whether it's tax decreases, tax increases, pro-gun, anti-gun, pretty much every aspect of your life. Now, we take an oath to one thing. When you go down there, you don't take an oath to a political party. You don't take an oath to a personality. You put your hand on the Bible and you swear to uphold the Constitution of both the United States and the state of West Virginia. I looked at the majority of bills that we were working on and passing this past session, and then I would open a copy of the Constitution and go, okay, where does that power come from? I can't find it in here. Because the Constitution, what people need to realize, just because they want something to operate a certain way, doesn't mean it can because of the Constitution. And the Constitution does not give politicians the ability to rule over your life. But unfortunately, too many on both sides of the aisle have violated their oath of office and just run amok, taking away your money, your liberty, your freedom, whether they're going after your gun rights or your Fourth Amendment rights to be left alone or your First Amendment rights. They keep infringing upon this, and the people need to actually start, delegates like myself work for the people. If you don't like what they're doing, guess what? Every 2 years you can make a change, right?
Right.
Show us the pink slip. So I wish more people would get involved in elections. A very small number of people that actually go out and vote, right? And the funny thing is, I hear people say, well, we have to protect democracy. We have to. The founding fathers are very clear. We're not a democracy because democracy is mob rule, because 51% of the people could then enslave 49%. We are a constitutional republic where your individual rights cannot be touched by the majority. So our God-given rights, our rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, cannot be voted away. But yet you see in states like Maryland, where they're taking away gun rights, or Virginia, where they're jacking up taxes and taking away gun rights, in clear violation of the founding principles, because the founding fathers realized that if we had a democracy, all it would take would be a large enough people to promise something to all the voters, and suddenly your rights could be stripped away. But your rights are paramount, and they cannot be infringed upon. But people let politicians get away with that.
I guess with you, you don't have like the same neutrality type. Because you could do say whatever you want as long as like so.
Well, the one thing I can't do as a delegate is I can't challenge another delegate to a duel. That is illegal.
Mark Twain, what's his face? He's still. Did you see where he the new Christie Nome, where he's like he just did this like congressional hearing. He's an interesting character. Mark Twain, what's his name? Do you know what I'm talking about? He just got appointed for Christie Nome's role. He was like, he still believes that we should be able to do duels.
Well, Texas just passed mutual combat laws.
And we're also getting much more stricter pedophile laws, which is so
Well,
ironic, but I like it.
which, until we start perp walking people with the Epstein files, we have a real problem in this country.
Yeah, like every other country's doing with their people, but anyway. So we talked about you going down there, what it looks like. So literally, what do you do? Your mechanisms of action when you go down there. So how does it work as far as like voting? Like, what is your role? What is your power? You see, you're like the Congress for a state level.
Correct, and it or how it doesn't work in many cases. So basically, every morning there's always the Republican caucus and there's always the Democrat caucus. I went to the Republican caucus. It happens every day, but I went a total of 3 times out of 60 times this past session.
You can do that.
You're not required to go.
But you're not required to do what?
But go to caucus.
Well, okay, so what is caucus?
Caucus is essentially where the legislators from a particular party will get together, and they do a lot of group think, and they decide what they're going to do as a group, right? And I don't look at things that way.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, well, it's how it traditionally is operated, in Congress or any place else. But I mostly. My day basically looks like this. I'm mostly up at 2:00 in the morning reading the bills, actually reading what the bills do.
Not for the first
Then
time, right?
Yeah, and then I'm back up at 6:00.
For the first time?
What do you
Not
mean?
you were reading the bill for the first time? No. So
Yeah.
let me ask. When do you get the bill generally?
Well, okay, there's about 2,500 bills that's introduced. But
2,500.
2,500. So, but normally only about 300 or 400 of them have legs or actually are going to move, because the way it's set up right now in West Virginia, which I disagree with, is one person, the Speaker of the House, decides which bills move.
Just one person
Yes.
on their own.
Right, because they appoint all the committee chairs and they assign the bills. Like if I put in a gun bill, it goes to Judiciary. I put in an education bill, it goes to the Education Committee. And the Speaker also appoints the chairs of the committees. And so if the chair wants to bring up a bill that the Speaker doesn't like, they won't be chair of that committee anymore. So you have essentially one person deciding what bills move. So
I did not know that. Actually.
Oh, yeah, you have one person, and it's kind of like having a king, but anyhow, I digress. You have one person deciding which bills move and which ones, then of course, they come up in committee. And as bills come up in committee, I get a report every day, mostly around 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then I spend the rest of the night into the wee hours of the morning reading the bills, seeing what they actually do.
So it could be really up until like the day before where you get the final bills?
Right, you get the bills that's moving, and the ones coming to your committee, and the ones coming to the floor. Because when bills go in, they go to committee, and then they have to pass committee to come to the floor.
It's very interesting.
Right. So I'm watching the bills in committee, I'm watching the bills on the floor, and now that I'm Freedom Caucus Chair, I'm also watching the bills in the state Senate, in committee, and on the floor. So
Busy.
It's a lot of reading. So then I'm up at 2:00 in the morning, get back up at 6 a.m., because sometimes they change the schedule on what bills are up, and I double check everything. Then I go into the Capitol. I send out all the information. This is the bills that's coming up to the different Freedom Caucus members. This is what you'll be dealing with today. And, looking at this is constitutional, that's not constitutional, that type of analysis.
And bills can be submitted, who submits bills?
Delegates or state senators.
So can like a regular person submit a bill?
No.
Okay.
You-
They have to like kind of like
You have
not
to- you have to
lobby
be-
with their,
Right, you have to get someone to put your bill in. Lobbyists, which are all over Charleston, and I'll get to that in a second.
Yep.
But they can get delegates or state senators to put in bills. So I get up in the morning, get to the Capitol, right? Normally don't go to Republican caucus, because the floor session normally starts around 11, right? And that's where bills are brought up, you vote them yes, you vote no. They have to be read 3 consecutive days. So they'll be on first reading, then second reading, which is when you can amend them, and third reading is final
what's
passage.
the reading for the
Well,
for the
basically,
viewers?
the state constitution says for any bill to pass, what it has to be read 3 times 3 separate days on the floor.
Like while you guys are out there on the floor.
Yep.
So you guys are you're literally going through it.
Yeah. we're going
Okay,
through the
okay,
bill.
cool.
Now, a lot of times what they do is they explain the bill. You can move that the bill's explained rather than the reds, because some of them are several hundred pages long. So, so I'm on the floor, and then after the floor session, then I'm part of the health committee. So I will go to the health meeting. Then after that, what happens is every night in Charleston, there are lobbyists having free happy hours for politicians and free dinners for politicians. I've never been to a one. I finish up my work, do everything I can, try to go to the gym, right? Because I need to go to the gym more as you get older.
You are on
need
the
to go
health
to the gym,
committee.
yeah. And then I go back to my house and talk to my wife and then start reading bills again. It's really monotonous.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they're always inviting me, oh, come to this happy hour, all the free booze you can drink, or come to this dinner, all the free food you can eat. Trying to essentially influence your vote.
Right.
And I don't believe in that.
I don't really know the legality of that, but we can. That's
It's
another
legal.
test.
It's legal. You have to register as a lobbyist, and it is. I mean, there's lobbyists all over the country. There's lobbyists in Congress, and they are representing special interests or different citizens groups. or
Yeah, they're
whatever.
like a rep of those different
Right.
groups. Yeah. Mhm.
Essentially. So, but I've never gone to any of those. Never will go to any of those. Very seldom lobbyists don't even come by my office anymore because they kind of know where I stand on things.
They're like, not this guy. Keep
Yeah,
going.
not that guy. I mean, there's a few like Young Americans for Liberty will come by because they know I'm for liberty. Like I received
Yeah, like interest
a
poll.
100% score both sessions for voting 100% in line with liberty. Also was the only legislator in West Virginia to get a 100% lifetime score of voting 100% in line with the Constitution, which should be
That's an accolade.
but that should be like
That's like the bare minimum, right? Like it should. It should be.
That's your job, right? That's your job, right? It shouldn't be like this astounding thing. We
That's
need
the
to
baseline.
change it. Yeah, it should be the baseline. We should change it that voting in line with the Constitution is not an extraordinary effort
That's a
rating
scary,
procedure.
yeah, it's a scary
Right.
thought that that's not the norm.
Right. And but Young Americans of Liberty will come by, National Association for Gun Rights, Gun Owners of America, because I do a lot of work on the Second Amendment. I do a lot of work on the Fourth Amendment as well. I'm big on due process of law.
Important?
Yep, very important, because what people don't realize is it says in the Constitution, in the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, that you cannot be deprived of your life, your liberty, or your property without due process of law, which means a jury of your peers, right? And that doesn't happen a lot in today's
Yeah, that's a
legal
whole
system.
other conversation I can have with you about that. But
And just the idea of the Fourth Amendment, I don't know if you know this or not, but down in Marion County, they've created what they call the Smart City Initiative. And Senator Capito, who's a federal senator, Shalimar Capito, got the funding to start what they call the Smart Cities. What it is they set up all these camera networks, flock cameras, store cameras,
what's the
street
camera
cameras.
that's really controversial right now, where they're like
The flock cameras.
Okay.
And what the Smart City does is it takes a scan of your face, right? It uses biometrics to scan your face, immediately do a background check on you, and follow you on a 28-hour rolling cycle. If that's not unconstitutional, I don't know what is. Yeah, exactly. Same people that are tracking everybody going the Great Fear-demic, also known as COVID.
Seems like it's such a big waste of resources. They're like, why do you need to track everyone? Like, not everybody is that super exciting. I don't understand, but I just,
Right, but remember, we live under 125,000 regulations. So there was a book written, I forget the name of the author, but they said that each of us unintentionally commit about 3 crimes a day.
I've heard
and don't
that
realize
too.
that, right? So, and they're basically watching everything you do, all to keep you safe. It's not the government's job to keep you safe. The government's job is to let you alone and live free. right?
wait. So they really are watching us that hard. Really are. That's a real thing, because we always talk about like surveillance, government. That's
Yes,
really.
it is a real thing.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, the government surveillance is a real thing. The NSA, I often joke, is the only government agency that actually listens, but it's so unconstitutional.
The NSA.
Because they look at literally everything you do on your phone and everything you do on your computer and every phone call you make, they can listen in on.
It's so crazy that all these conspiracy theories are actually just coming true these
Yeah,
days.
we're just running out of conspiracy theories because it's actually happening. But I put in a bill to ban that. I said, because the Fourth Amendment says you have to get a warrant based upon probable cause before you interfere in someone's
Exactly.
private life phone calls, emails, or whatever.
Exactly.
And of course, that didn't pass because it's,
It makes too much sense, or what? Like,
both constitutional, which again, we go back to people don't vote not the Constitution. But the other thing is that yeah, I was painted as being anti-law enforcement because I wanted to make people get a warrant. Well, I'm sorry, I'm pro-Constitution. There's a difference between being anti-law enforcement and pro-Constitution. The Constitution is the law of the land. I don't care what anybody else says, it's the law of the land. Just like we fought to end, are you familiar with the open fields doctrine?
okay, I know the name of it, but you'll probably have to refresh me.
Okay. The Fourth Amendment says that you'll be secure in your possessions and your property and your papers without a warrant, right? In the 1920s, in the middle of the absolute failure known as prohibition, the Supreme Court ruled that the Fourth Amendment only applies to what's inside the four walls of your house. So what's been going on since then? Because they were trying to catch people doing moonshine. The revenuers are out.
Right.
My family were moonshiners.
We see how well that worked out,
Yep, exactly. And so we tried to repeal the open fields doctrine to make them get a warrant to go on private property. Because I'm sorry, that's how the Fourth Amendment was written. And because police, especially DNR officers, Department of Natural Resources, they can go on anybody's farm or private hunting property without a warrant to snoop around. We tried to end the open fields doctrine this past session and say, no, if a law enforcement officer wants to come on your property, they have to get a warrant. Now, there are extant circumstances. If they see a crime going on, they see a dead body, of course they can go and intervene, right? But they can't just wander about, put up surveillance cameras and stuff like that just to watch over whatever you happen to be doing on your property. And we tried to repeal the open fields doctrine and restore the Fourth Amendment. And everybody kept saying, oh, you're just, again, anti-law enforcement. Like, no, the Constitution's clear. And by the way, the Constitution is not to protect you when you're behaving yourself. The Constitution's there to protect you when you're not, okay, because we have inalienable rights. So everybody is what? Innocent until proven guilty? So why are you wandering all over their property, right? So
These are such common sense things.
well, I know it's common sense, and if you talk to the voters, it's common sense. But try to get, sometimes, when I'm talking to my colleagues, I have a couple good friends down there that all believe the same thing, and we all work together and that. And then sometimes you're like wondering, just what are these other people there for, right? Because they're not representing what the people want, right? The people, they hold up the Constitution. They're always saying, we the people, and they say, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, due process of law, 10th Amendment, and we could talk about that, how the federal government bribes states to get them to do things that's unconstitutional. But that goes on all the time too. But you talk to the voters, they're like, no, we want the Constitution upheld. We want you to do your job. But when you get to Charleston, it's a totally different situation. You go to D.C., it's even worse. It's far worse than D.C.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Well, never mind.
Yeah, it's because, again, going back to Frederick Bastiat and the law, he said, if you let government interfere in every section of everybody's life, there'll be non-stop fighting at the head of government.
It's become so big. Like, I think that each institution has become so so big, and then that's why I always wonder if it ever really can be reduced down. They've got their hands in everything. There's always this organization, this agency, this committee, and they have their hands in literally everything. And it's gotten so large, and I just wonder what do you think is the effective way? I know you're for smaller government, so
right.
How do you see?
I want a constitutional sized government means about 10% of the government we have right now. Okay, well. Ronald Reagan said this, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program, because once they institute these programs, they're very hard to root back out. It's kind of, yeah, and when you can always change the law, but what's really going to change it, in my opinion, what will happen, they keep printing money. The dollar's worth 3% what it was in 1913, okay? You keep printing money. We're printing our way to poverty. Eventually, our dollar is going to be next to worthless. It'll be like 1930s Germany when the Weimar Republic was literally paying people 3 times a day because the rate of inflation was growing so greatly. Yeah, just like back, like I said, during the Great Fear-demic, otherwise known as the COVID fiasco, when they were controlling everybody's life. Remember all those checks they sent out to everybody? They sent everybody these checks. They printed all that money.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what is this going to do for, like, economy? All this money, I mean, obviously, we pay a lot of taxes, the government, there's a lot of, money available, kind of, but it had to come from somewhere, and then I found out that it was essentially printed, so it was kind of like fluff, it wasn't...
It was fluff, and actually, the amount of money you got, if you looked at how much went overseas, was ridiculous, which we can talk about foreign aid being unconstitutional at some point.
Well, we can talk about all the corporations that got...
But, they keep printing this money, and a third of the money we have in circulation today has been printed over the past 5 or 6 years.
But we can't print money.
No, that's considered counterfeiting.
Right.
But by the way, you realize the Federal Reserve that's doing all this money printing is not even part of the federal government.
Exactly, yes.
It is the world's largest, it's the largest banking cartel in the world.
It's like quasi, well, it's supposed to not be a part of the federal government, but it is highly connected to the federal. And also,
It's connected,
we run out of
but
the
it's not.
gold. There's no more gold backing of anything.
No,
Yeah.
and see, that's the problem, because when gold-backed currency, when you have something that backs your currency of intrinsic value, something that's real, the government cannot manipulate it. But to get more control over you and I, they rushed the Federal Reserve in 1913. And by the way, we didn't have an income tax till after the Federal Reserve Act was passed, and they started printing this fiat fractional currency. Then what happened? They had to give it value. So like, okay, well, we'll start taxing the individual labor, which the founding fathers were absolutely against income taxes. They said it was immoral to take bread from the mouth of the people that they have worked for. But
Do you think we're moving to a what's it called, cryptocurrency kind of?
cryptocurrency, I don't know that much about crypto, but I'm okay with crypto as long as the government's not controlling crypto.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking because, okay, so they did away with the penny, and I could start seeing
Poor Lincoln.
but it seems insignificant, but I kind of try to like look at the patterns of things and like what could develop from taking that step. And you start like removing the penny. They said it was for specific reasons, but I always wonder if like we're going to move much more towards like a digital, more controlled currency. I don't know.
Digital should be opposed at every level, because if it's digital currency, the government can control it.
That's what I'm saying.
If
I
we
think
have
it's gonna
cash
happen
in our
like that.
pockets, right? That's our cash. We have control. We can buy goods. We can do the free voluntary exchange of goods. I give you money and you give me a good, right? But if we get digital currency, at any point the government could shut it down.
That's what I'm thinking. I think that's
It's
what they're pushing
terrifying.
for. It is. That's why
It's absolutely terrifying.
Even if people like didn't really, it's the penny, right? But I'm looking at the future of this and like how it trickles down. And I honestly think that especially with the state of where we're at with things now, I just wonder if that's going to be a possibility, because it's really terrifying to think
What they're
of.
talking about digital currency and federal digital currency, everybody should oppose that 100%, because that would outlaw everything. Like, your neighbor has a lawnmower for sale. You go over and buy it with cash, you bring back the lawnmower. The government would insert itself in that. Where do they have the authority, first of all? Right? They don't have the authority, but they claim they do. And so,
They will invent authority.
Yeah, bless their hearts. But the thing is, but we have to be careful and watch out for a digital currency.
Yes.
Because we don't want government controlling anything more than they're allowed to do under the Constitution. Just like, everybody gets all worked up who the president is, right? Everybody gets all worked up over that. But if we actually followed the Constitution, it would not matter who the president really was. It would matter who your governor of your state would be much more important than who the president.
Yeah, there's a framework, an inherent framework there for a reason, and we've gotten so far off the rails from it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be looking to you for answers on how to pull it back. So.
Just start electing people that will absolutely stand firm on their oath of office. That is key.
That's why that's what I've been trying to do, like interviews with you and with others, and really kind of dig into and helping people understand who watch these videos, like understand more about it from an educational standpoint, because it's so important to get there, to really vet the people who are going to be making decisions for your state and for your country, and really dig into what they believe in, and they should always be constitutionalists, always have Constitution first, and it's really there to protect you because these decisions affect everyone. They affect West Virginia. If you're at a federal level, they affect everyone, and more people need to get. How do you get people to the ballot boxes? That's a question I have. That's where I'm at.
What people have to realize is what's most important in politics is they have to be engaged in the election cycle. And a lot of times the primary election is more important than the general election, because if you only have the choice of evil A or evil B come November, you have no real choice at all. It's the primary where you get to decide, because you have a lot of grassroots, a lot of insurgent candidates who actually think the way that I do and many others who are constitutionalists, and you need to find out where they stand. You need to ask very hard, pointed questions. You need to, hold them down and ask them questions, because they're looking to serve you, right? And that's what they're doing. They're supposed to serve you. So, but again, primaries are vital, and we have them coming up on May 12th.
May 12th,
in West Virginia. So,
and we got to get voters. Voters need to make sure they're registered, which I believe it's there's April 29th. 29th, April 29th. Yes.
Yep.
So make sure you are registered by April 29th for the primaries.
Right, and if Republicans have closed the primaries, which means only Republicans can vote for who's going to be the Republican candidate. So if you want to vote in the Republican primaries, you can go on. It's easy. You go on the Secretary of State's website and change my affiliation. There's a big button there, and you can just change over to Republican.
Wait, can you explain that one more time a little bit so I can understand fully what you're saying?
Okay. In primaries, you have the political party, you have the Democratic primary, and you have the Republican primary. And Republican primaries, we've closed the Republican primaries because we didn't want to have, a lot of times what would happen is a lot of the more rhino side of the party would go market to Democrats to switch to independents so they could vote in the Republican election. I've seen many, many good candidates lose because essentially Democrats were coming over and voting in Republican primaries. So if you want to vote in the Republican primary, this is key. If you want to vote in the Republican primary this year in West Virginia, you have to go to the Secretary of State's website by April 29th. I do it beforehand because we all know how efficient government is. And I register as a Republican so you can vote in the primary. Now, I don't have a primary this time. I was told that the establishment in Charleston was going around trying to find anybody to run against me and promising them like 6 figures in donations.
They don't like incorruptible people.
Yeah, they don't like that. And they don't like people who think independently. So,
Or think it all.
yeah. Well, but, again, primaries are vital because a lot of West Virginia being solid red, the only real competitive election is in the primary. Now, my district's a little bit different. My district's what we call a purple district, and it's about an 8-point district. So there's about 8 points to separate Republicans from Democrats, and you have a lot of independents in the middle. So this year will probably be very tough election year for me. Last time when I ran for office in 2024, I knocked on 6,000 doors. I talked to people at their homes because I'm looking to work for them. I'm basically interviewing for a job. And I told them, I'm not going to lie to voters. I tell them exactly where I stand on things. They ask me any hard question, and I'll tell you. But come the general election, because this is the first time since we've had redistricting that a Republican has been in the White House, and historically the Democratic Party, or whichever party is not in power in the White House, gets a bump. So it's going to be a really hard-fought election coming up this November. So I'm going to be really busy starting in September, knocking on doors and talking.
I say, are you campaigning right now?
I'm not campaigning right now. I mean, I communicate with my voters on a regular basis. I have about 30,000 voters on my email list, and I also have pretty good social media presence. So I'm always talking. I will send them mail, let them know, like I just sent a letter out explaining everything. This is what happened in the session. They grew government, which is going to increase your inflation, right? They didn't put rules on data centers. They didn't protect the Second Amendment. And that's something I want to talk about real quick is there's a lot of parliamentary rules on how you operate in the House of Delegates. And even if a bill doesn't come out of committee, there's a motion you can make on the floor that's highly discouraged by leadership. It's called a discharge. You can try to discharge a bill from committee and bring it to the floor. And I did that because West Virginia, while we don't have red flag anti-gun laws like most people know, we have a backdoor red flag gun law. And I put in legislation to ban that. It also, a companion bill passed out of the Senate and they weren't running it in the House. So it passed the Senate, it wasn't being run in the House. So I made a motion on the floor to bring the bill forward and vote on it, because a vote against bringing the bill forward to vote on it is a vote against the bill. I cannot be more clear on that. If you vote against bringing the bill up, you're voting against the bill. And of course it failed. We had 17 people vote with me. 17 out of 100 voted with me. Everybody else, even though they claimed to support the Second Amendment, voted against it and they said, if you talk to them, we don't want to make leadership mad, because if we make leadership mad, then our bills won't pass. I'm like, I thought we were supposed to actually go down there and lead and actually work for the people, right? And actually do what we think is right, not just play typical 8th grade lunch table style.
What is what we hire? We're hiring leaders. We're hiring, we don't hurt the company.
Well, the servitude leadership is the way I look at it.
Right. Yeah. So also, I'm going to highlight, or I'm going to tag his profile, your page on Facebook, and just to wrap up here. So primaries are May 12th. Make sure you are registered. And I guess if I choose to vote for you, then I got to switch over to a Republican for 2 seconds. But so you have to switch over for 2 seconds. No. Chris Sanders, big proponent for small government.
No, I mean, my entire basis of why I ran for office was fairly simple. And that is, I believe in personal freedom.
Yeah,
I believe in personal freedom and to live your life how you want, as long as you don't impact anybody else from doing the same thing. And secondly, economic freedom. So you keep the money that you earn so you can take care of your family. You have one life to live on this planet. You only have one, right? I want to see every West Virginian achieve their life goals. And unfortunately, what's happened is we see with overarching government and all the taxes and all the regulations, people have given up hope. For the first time in a long time in our history, people have given up hope. And that's really sad, because this is their one life. They're raising their children. They all have goals. When we all come out of high school, we have these great plans for how we're going to live our life, right? Mine changed dramatically, but
so did mine.
But you almost feel like there's a glass ceiling above you. And if you're not in the preferred class, or political class, you feel like you just can't get ahead. And it's time for that to change. It's time for us to free the people up so that West Virginia can become all it can be. I don't see West Virginia as it is. I see West Virginia, if we just restore the Constitution, restore freedom to the people, I see that West Virginia could be a shining light for freedom amongst the entire country. And we have an opportunity here to do this. And I just need support of the people to do so.
Absolutely. I just to touch on that real quick, I know it can become so discouraging, just exactly what you were talking about, to the point where people just almost just disregard voting. They disregard participating almost, because it's just like, what essentially is going to really change for me. And I'd like to say, especially after talking to you throughout the week and today, that I really feel like you are definitely for the people. And surprisingly, we have a lot more in common than I thought we would. And I appreciate you coming out. So good luck to you, Chris Sanders. All right, perfect. And then we can do a debate. I'm down.